What we know is that when we're exposed to traumatic events or things that cause extreme fear, God has created the brain in a way where we immediately protect ourselves without consciously deciding to protect ourselves. And it's called the fight-flight response. Many people have heard that. The area of the brain that regulates that is called the amygdala. And the amygdala is a little plum seed size area of the brain, even smaller than that, that's located right here. And it's also part of our brain that holds our memories, where memories are formed and they're cemented. Unless normally there's a part of the brain in the front, and this is the part of the brain, our frontal lobe here, which really is where our reason and our logic and our judgment lies, where we can take all of this stimuli and we can decide, I'm going to do this. No, I'm not going to do this. That's the part of the brain that tells us to hold our tongue when we should stop talking or not say that. It's also the part of the brain that determines if what causes you to be afraid or to feel fear and anxiety is worth reacting to. For many of us who struggle with severe anxiety or fear, thoughts that plague us, it's often because the part of our brain that would normally tease that out is hijacked. All of those chemicals that are swimming around make this part of the brain unable to do that job. And the only way to recondition this part of the brain to do the job is we have to identify when those feelings and those thoughts are not based in truth. We have to sort of stop and ask ourselves, why am I feeling this way? Why am I reacting this way? Because often we go through life blind to why we feel a certain way and why we're having a panic attack or why we're feeling anxious. We don't know, but the first step is to ask yourself, why? I think for someone who's learning to identify or recognize why they're feeling that way, the next step is to then take those thoughts and to decide that this isn't me, to reject them in a way, and then you have to fill in the narrative. So you have to identify the knowledge and the truth, and you have to continually grab a hold of it. And you have to compare it to the reason why you're afraid, and you have to hang on to it. And it requires a lot of work, but first you have to identify it. Then you have to identify that it's not based in truth, and then you have to determine the truth. So it requires us to be intentional about those steps. Recognize, reject it as true, and then determine what is true and hang on to it. And often it requires us to do it over and over again, because when we do it over and over again, we can actually change that circuitry. We can actually create new synapses or connections in the brain, and we can weaken those existing connections that promote fear and anxiety. And so the thing about transforming our mind and on a neurological level, changing our brain circuitry, is you have to force your brain to do it differently. You have to do the opposite of what your brain has been wired to do, to force the rewiring. And in the spiritual realm, in terms of what God wants, you have to allow Him to transform your mind by doing it His way, which is opposite than your way. So whether it's letting your mind go dark with worry and fear, and those fears grow and grow and grow, letting your attitude become sour, becoming ungrateful and complaining and full of pride or fear, you give that all to God. And you pray about it, and you thank Him. And in a miraculous, supernatural way, He changes the atmosphere.